All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aurelia's virtual book club. Um, we have Brian K. Morris here, and we're going to talk about all sorts of cool stuff about his new book, Vulcana. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, gladly. I am Brian K. Morris. I am currently living in Lafayette, Indiana, after spending all but about 15 months of my life in the wilds of Illinois. Um, I came to Indiana just in time for that big to do about the Religious Freedom Bill. And I've been telling
Mm-hmm.
everybody I was tired of apologizing for my politicians. So, my timing as ever remains flawless. So, but yes, I am the author of this book here, Vulcana, Rebirth of the Champion, and I have several other books here that I will mercilessly plug during the course of our conversation. Not that I'm prepared
Awesome.
or anything, but this may not be the most serious interview you ever see,
That's
folks.
okay. It's about having fun.
That's right, by gosh. And if anyone wants to have fun, let it be us. Anyway, I'll give you the standard bio. I realized I wanted to be a writer when I was in seventh grade, when I realized that words mean stuff, mostly when you do it incorrectly. I had done one of those boring what I did over my Christmas vacation essays. And in reading it to the class, and this is why you should always read your stuff aloud before you send it to an
Mm-hmm.
editor. I was trying to convey that the tree was lit up. Unfortunately, I described it in such a way it made it sound like my teetotaling parents were lit up. So, and that's when I also learned the value of a cheap laugh. But anyway, I decided I would become a writer, and I spent years honing my craft, so to speak, writing everything from business proposals to advertising for all media, just about anything I could get away with. And about 3 years ago, I decided I had had some articles printed, some stage
Mm-hmm.
plays produced, and finally I decided I would do this seriously. Well, right after I made this resolution, I had been working for the local water company, and they brought me into the office to tell me that they valued my work, appreciated my 11 years there, and hoped the next employer would enjoy my services just as well. That they needed to make the stock options look a little better, and so they had to cut a little of the overhead, which were employees that were doing the work. So, not that I'm bitter.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they wondered why I went through all 6 stages of grief in about 45 seconds. It's because I had a plan B. And so
Yeah.
so I used their severance package, including 6 months with a reemployment agency, to take one of those aptitude tests finally. What are you good at? And it said 97% writer, so I figured that was good enough, a percentage to risk it. And so I used everything that this company could teach me about how to become a publisher. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I got involved with internet publishing,
Yeah.
because I started looking at that, and I started looking at print on demand, and realized that there was nothing but potential, that this was something that has been around for the most part for about 10 years, and it's still like you can get in on the ground floor. So
Yeah.
I started making a business plan for what I was going to do as a writer and publisher. And I thought, well, I needed to get something out quickly. Here comes the merciless plugs. Brace yourself. And so the first thing I did was I discovered something called Kindle Worlds, which was basically
Mm-hmm.
paid fan fiction. And
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of comic books, so I wrote Bloodshot, the Coldest Warrior, which happened to be like the #1 hot seller for the month of October 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a good way to get my name out there and get some quick reviews, start my platform immediately. Then I needed something, I thought, fairly quick to follow up on it. And I happened to have written a 10-minute play several years before, a Christmas play
Okay.
that, yeah, and of course, this will not surprise you, knowing me as you do now, that this play was considered a bit irreverent for the holiday. It was what if Dr. Frankenstein had animated the dead to create the spirit of Christmas? So that's when I came up with Santastein, filled with much inappropriate humor. And this was my next release. And then a few months after that, I decided to do a short story. And I had done an experiment where I had written several superhero stories, because again, I like comic books. And I took out the names and boiled everything down to like their archetypes. And that's when I did Conflict. And you can tell this is the cover I did. There is just no
super fascinating. Just text and a red background.
Exactly. Yeah, we tested my graphics ability to their utmost with this one, and we came up failing. But what happened was my cover artist for Santastein, a wonderful gentleman named Trevor Eric Hawkins, and I started bouncing ideas around. And I thought there's been like a dearth of strong female characters, protagonists in particular. And so I came up with Vulcana, the rebirth of a champion. This is loosely based on a comic book concept from the 1960s where I took the stuff that I thought worked and brought it into a modern context and set up a character, Angelique Forge, who discovers the lost armor of Vulcan's champion, and piled the misery on her, basically. And this is the first in a series. Actually, all the books that I've got so far, I'm looking at sequels to, but this was one I was very proud of. Normally, if I write like 3 to 5 decent pages a day, I think, self high fives, I'm good. This one, I got so into the characters that I was doing 20 to 25 pages a day.
Wow, that's a lot more.
Yeah. We're talking, this was a marathon, and obviously it's,
it's thick too. Yeah.
It is 1.7 pounds according to Amazon, and a case of these weighs 33.5 pounds. Trust me, my UPS man will verify that. So, and so this year I've been on what I call the Rockstar Tour, where I've been promoting all of the work and getting to talk to people, and it's been such as yourself, and it's and it's been great. I've been making a lot of new friends, making a lot of sales, and honing my craft, because part of this. We can talk about literary pretensions all we want, which I have few, but the fact is we have to be a little bit of Stan Lee and a little bit of P.T. Barnum if we want people to know what we're doing. So, and that's the part I've been working on all summer. So that's me up to the present.
Awesome. So you mentioned comic books. So yes. I wanted to ask you if you remember the first comic book you ever read and what it was and what your experience of discovering comics was.
Okay. This was way back when, and I hate to say it, this was in the Eisenhower administration. The late Eisenhower administration, oh boy. But anyway, I lived in Olivet, Illinois at the time, this tiny little community where the only thing that's really there of importance is a seminary. There was this little mom and pop grocery store, and of course the parents, while they were doing the real shopping, would say, go over there by the stand and read comic books. Well, it was an old Superman comic, and I cannot remember the issue number, but it was one where Clark Kent and Lois and Jimmy and Perry had been transported to an alien dimension, and they were being chased by the space dragon, and Superman, of course, had no powers because it was a red sun. Yeah. 3 bags full, Brian. But anyway, that was the first comic I can remember reading. And I grew up reading like a lot of comics because, I was a pretty solitary child and active imagination. So, and with especially a male parental unit who didn't exactly appreciate such qualities in his offspring. Here's a comic book, sit down, shut up. So I did. And so and to this day, I still enjoy comics to a large extent. I think it is a challenge. I'm actually starting to write a few comic books now, and I I would challenge any writer to try it because you talk about needing discipline. Um, a a novel you could just sit there and type till the cows come home or your hands get tired or whatever. But a comic book, you basically have to figure out your page count, then how many panels per page, words per panel, and it almost becomes a technical exercise after a while. But it really, really sharpens your writing. And if anyone needs to learn how to be concise in their writing, it's probably me. So, but it's a fun challenge, and like I said, I still enjoy a lot of comic books to this day, and I do enjoy a lot of the heroic themes in them. So
yeah, I'm a big superhero fan, definitely. um, yeah, yeah. I've positioned myself on my website now. Now that I've like fixed everything finally, as a Batman fairy godmother.
Oh, cool. I'm
So,
Batman
like, what
fairy
if Batman
godmother.
were your fairy godmother? Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be, and boy howdy, it's I could see like if fairy godmother like whips up the magic slippers and the pumpkin and everything for you, that she could also solve the mystery of who the slipper belongs to. Even so, she's like
Right.
multifunctional. This is brilliant. You need to
Right.
start writing this down. I'm telling you, you got gold here.
Yeah, well, I do actually, because I have because I'm a fairy godmother, so clearly I have to have a fairy court, and there's the purple court, and there's the gold court. So, yeah.
There we go. There we go. You've got it all planned out. I love this.
Yeah. So, when did you have the first spark for the idea for Vulcana? Like, what were you doing? Were you reading more about like mythology and things, or how did that come about?
Well, I fell in with a group of people who were doing a number of revivals of some of the characters from a long defunct company called Charlton. Quick history: it was formed by someone with ties to organized crime who started a magazine for his girlfriend. One of the people involved, that she wanted to know what the lyrics of many popular songs of the day were. Well, he published a magazine thinking, well, this is a great idea. Well, unfortunately, he forgot to clear with any of the copyright owners permission to do this, so he spent some time in jail. That's where he found his finance guy, and they literally built a publishing concern that did magazines and eventually comic books. And one of the characters was called Son of Vulcan, one of the least impressive superhero names I could ever imagine. And I remember reading them at 10 years old going, this is not really that good. But falling in with the Charlton Neo crowd, as they call themselves, I went back and reread them, and I thought, there are some germs of some really, really good ideas in here. And then I started checking them out against the Vulcan mythology, and wishing to heaven that they had used more of them. And so I came up with this idea, well, what if I had similar powers but a female protagonist, someone who had these powers and was not limited to the strength and vulnerability flight zeitgeist of the time. So eventually, once I got her put together and started thinking about Vulcan himself and giving them challenges to encounter, that's when Vulcana really started to take shape. And I admit I use kind of what we call the 3-act play, which, for people who might not know, is introducing the characters, then piling up complications. And again, this was one of those things where the more I thought about it, the more on fire, see what I did there, I got about Vulcana. And then I started talking with my cover artist, Trevor Hawkins, and he started bouncing ideas off of me and bringing in these wider concepts that he had read about. Suddenly I'm incorporating this, and all of a sudden it's not just a story, it's becoming like a tapestry and too much to put into one book. So I focused on one thing, outlined it to death. And then, as I said, I started writing. And once the character took a hold of me, I really got to the point where I was no longer a writer, but a transcriptionist.
Mm-hmm.
That she's guiding the story, and that's when it really started to be magic for me. And I knew I had something good because I sent it to Trevor and I said, "Oh, I want your feedback on this." He stayed up all night long and read all 460 pages of this monster.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's a good sign. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, and I have to share this with you. I got the nicest compliment about 2 weeks ago. One of my friends bought Vulcana from me because he likes to support his friends. God bless him. And he started reading, and he told me that in the last few years, all he's really read are textbooks and technical manuals for his job.
Mm-hmm. It's really easy to fall into that trap.
It is, and I've done it too. But the thing is, he told me I forgot what it was like to read for fun again.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my God, that just makes the whole trip worthwhile. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty pleased.
So you were writing like 5 pages before, and then you were suddenly writing like 20 pages a day. So how did the structure of your day change to enable that?
Well, one thing I talk about with people that say I have no time for writing is that you make time. And I was making time by like not going out, not doing any. I think the only time I went out was to check the mail. But I would just sit here and just type and type and type until either nature called or someone said, you really need to get away from your chair and see if your knees still work. So, but yeah, I would put in like 12 or more hour days writing.
Wow.
But I was having so much fun. That was the thing. It wasn't a chore in the absolute least. It was a joy, and I wanted to get to the ending before anyone. So
yeah, that's one of the awesome things about writing is that you get to find out what happens before anybody else.
Exactly.
You have the inside scoop.
Yeah, and there were times I was just as surprised as anyone else would be. So. But that's something I think I told you once before. I had encountered that sort of thing with this book, where I had written the book with the idea that the characters I created would die. Because I was, one of the aspects of the program that allowed me to do it, called Kindle Worlds, was that the copyright or trademark owners would then own everything I created for them. It was pretty much work made for hire, and I was fine with that. That's cool. However, I thought, my gosh, if I come up with the next Superman, I don't want anybody getting rich off of it but me. So I had these like 4 ancillary characters that I stuck in there, and I planned for them all to die. And so I'm typing, get through the big conflict, the big fight at the end, and I'm starting to wrap things up in the final chapter, and I'm like, wait a minute. One of them's still alive. Somehow, in the course of writing, this one character had saved himself. And so I thought, well, fine, you want to work that hard for it, you get to live. And so he may wind up in sequels, yes. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was fun. It was a fun revelation. It probably speaks volumes about my mental state, and probably not a good way, but.
So, what was the most interesting thing you learned about Vulcan mythology as you were planning this story?
Vulcan had issues. He had more issues. He had more issues than National Geographic. We're talking about someone who his mom and dad have a fight, mostly because baby isn't as cute as mom thinks he should be. So she throws him over the side of a mountain where he proceeds to fall for the next day and a half. He's rescued by mermaids. And when he goes back, he he's more Loki than anybody because like
Mm-hmm.
he puts something in Jupiter's chair that wouldn't let him get up until Vulcan said so. And then he's married off to Venus, who then proceeds to make it with Mars, the god of war. And so he sets up a web that traps them together, buck naked, drags them to like the town square, or the godly equivalent of Same, and leaves them there for everyone to just like gawk at for a couple days. Um, and plus, he is like has a slight physical deformity because of the fall down the mountain. But what really, really fascinated me about Vulcan, and it is an aspect of the book, and it's not just Vulcan, I found out, but that some cultures that worshipped Vulcan not only saw him as a god of forges and of
Mm-hmm.
fire, but also of art, of writing, even of birth itself.
Oh, that's interesting.
It
That's
is.
more similar to like Athena and Artemis in a way.
Exactly. And even Mars was seen in some of the sects, let's call them, of worshippers that thought he was also a god of agriculture.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like all these gods were multitaskers, the original multitaskers. And that is one of the elements that I wrote into Vulcana, where she has to recognize Vulcan for what he is, what he truly is. And so she has to work this through in her mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
that was a real revelation. Plus the fact that he did have parental issues and he wasn't exactly the coolest kid on the block. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that too. He had some problems. He was set upon. So he became a fun character to write, and especially when I considered it as what had happened in the source material from the comic as possibly really happening. Although because it's a trademark character owned by somebody else, I could not refer to him directly. But we can hint about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the archetype thing. Um, that we could take the stuff that worked with the character again and apply it to the new character, and we, in essence, have a god who is one of creation, but at the same time, he's about 30 years out of touch with what Earth is really like,
Mm-hmm.
which sets up for some more dynamics later on, I think. So, and it's this is the sort of book that almost begs for sequels, because every time I talk to Trevor Hawkins, we wind up plotting another book. I think I'm up to about 15 by now. I just need to
Oh
live
man.
long. Yeah, I need to live long enough to get these things written now.
At
So
least plot them out so that, Brandon Sanderson can finish them for you.
there we go. There we go. Yeah, I'll just there was a guy back in the 70s named Lyle Kenyon Engel who would do that. He would like plot out these books, set up the book deals, and then he would hand them off to some other writer and let them flesh it out, which I thought was quite the racket. And now I'm looking at like, hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's a good way, like, once you're known, it's a good way of, like, helping a younger writer succeed as well. I know a lot of, like, very prolific writers will do that.
Yeah, and that is something I do like doing. I mentor a number of publishers and writers, mostly because I've gotten so many tips and information from other writers and other
Mm-hmm.
professionals that I'm more than happy to pass it on. I was telling somebody I don't have an original thought at all about how to market your book or how to write the silly thing or this, that, or the other, that I have liberally stolen from everyone who's ever given me advice. But by the same token, I'm passing it on and hope that
Mm-hmm.
one day they'll do the same with somebody else that needs it. So
Yeah. I think that's very true. I mean, everyone I've talked to in the author community, regardless of how they're being published, is generally very willing to give you advice
yeah.
about all aspects of everything.
Well, sure. As I tell people, you ask me what time it is, I'll give you the history of clock making. So,
So,
you ask me a question, then you bring your lunch. That's how it works.
So, what was the hardest part about writing this story?
Well, I was talking to several people during the process, and I had intended this book to be about 200 pages, and I'm sitting there typing and typing and typing, and it's like, well, we're at page 100. She's not in the armor yet. We're on 125. She's still nowhere close to being in the armor yet. And so I was making this benchmark of she's got to get in the bleeping armor. And it just, unfortunately, the story just wound up working the way it did. Because part of the story is we have to heap abuse upon her, which makes her eventual triumph all the greater. But it just got to be, it's like, okay, fine, whenever she'll never get into the armor, I'm just going to write the stupid thing. But no, she does get in the armor.
Awesome.
Yeah. She gets into the armor. But
you couldn't have that cover, right?
Exactly. The Federal Trade Commission is pretty strict about this sort of thing. But no, it was a process, and it was a fun process, and everyone tells me so far it's been good for them too. So it's like the characters will take over when they take over, and that's the main thing I think I've learned from this book. And I'm not in the driver's seat. I'm just refueling the car every now and then.
So, if you could pick any actress to play her, who would you pick?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask that.
Liking comics and superheroes and stuff, it's kind of necessary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. I have a couple. I think my first choice would be Amy Adams, because I really liked her portrayal of Lois Lane in Man of Steel. It was,
yeah.
She was aggressive. She was inquisitive. She was compassionate, which were the qualities I wanted to put into the character of Vulcana and Angelique Forge. Without going into that stereotypical Lois Lane thing, oh, Superman, save me, sort of thing, girl hostage sort of situation. I didn't want to get into that. So, and Amy just did such a fabulous job as Lois Lane that I would pick her as my first choice. My second would probably be somebody like Jennifer Aniston.
Really?
Yeah, because she's got that attitude. I think she's got like this core of toughness to her. But, it's one of those things where I could see her standing up to somebody that desperately needed their attitude adjustment, and then thinking about later, what did I just do? And, never too cool to like maybe break down and cry when the situation demanded it. So, yeah, she would be my second choice. And I don't want to get into an age kind of thing, because I know Jennifer's been around a long, long time, but she's quite youthful too, which I think is something that a Vulcana would need. So I see Vulcana as being kind of in her 30s, actually. I also wanted to avoid the like a Twilight type of character, just barely out of high school and vulnerable. I wanted somebody that had been around the block a couple times, had some baggage, had a little baggage to her, but still had a good solid character at her core, even after all the terrible things I do to her in this book.
So, what should we be most excited to discover as we read Vulcana?
I hope that people appreciate Angelique Forge, because to me, what makes Superman interesting is Clark Kent. What makes Spider-Man interesting is Peter Parker. I want people, and I think that's why I liked writing Angelique for as long as I did before I officially made her Vulcana, was that she was an interesting character herself. That she, like I said, she has seen war. She's an army, that she is making her way in the world as a blogger. She has these out of the way interests, like a lot of us writers do.
Yeah.
I say in the book that she knows 7 languages, 5 of which are still being used, and she can ask you if you want French fries in all of them. So, and I tried to surround her with, fairly believable characters. I just hope people like the characters, and that when they get to the parts where, yes, she will triumph, that they can share that triumph with her.
Okay.
So.
I'm definitely excited.
Good.
Yeah. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And we had a little bit of technical difficulties getting this episode off the ground, so thank you for your patience.
Yeah, well, and I hope the sound quality is good, because, I'm in Mexico.
You sound fine to me. You sound great. And, well, if we have to do it again, well, then we'll do it again. Because, I'm always looking for, another reason to, it's like...
hide your face with...
just... the hype machine rolls on, so...
Well, I will let everyone know when the discussion will happen, which I don't have scheduled yet because I'm not on top of everything.
I understand. You're a traveler.
Yeah, but I will definitely let everyone know, and you're welcome to come back and chat during the discussion and give us all the spoilers and all.
Oh, yes.
All of that.
And I'll even tease to future novels, because I already have the next one mostly plotted, and I have the 3rd issue title. So I'm ready.
You'll have to tease but not spoil those other ones.
Yeah, that's true. Well, fortunately, I'm not far enough along that I can really spoil much.
You'll be like silent and mysterious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rosebud's the sled. Damn, I hate when that happens.
Yeah. All right.